Good everyone, welcome to this video. Today we have a Should You Talisman episode on the M22 Locust. This is going to be one that I'm fairly certain a lot of people are going to enjoy because I have a personal attachment to this tank. I do really like it, and that's putting that lightly. So in the description below, as per normal, there will be timestamps linked to the relevant parts. So obviously the firepower, the mobility and all that jazz, the armor, conclusion, and obviously the competition of the vehicle. There isn't many for this. I will say that right now. Without further ado, let's get in and let's go over the armor, the weaponry, and the mobility of this little tank. So this tank is actually very, very small. To put it into perspective, this tank stands about, well, it's shorter than me, and I'm quite short myself, and that's putting that lightly. But of course, with that size, given that this thing was meant to fit into a glider, there is obviously consequences, which doesn't really bother it, to be honest. The armour, of course, being extremely poor, with it being just 1 inch at the thickest, with the gun mantlet being able to take some hits to some extent. From light guns, that is. It's not going to be taking anti-tank rounds anytime soon. The side armour is mostly 12.7, with this upper part being 9.5, and the rear is only half an inch thick. The roof is also half an inch, well, just under 10 mils thick, and this bit is completely, well, it might as well not be there. So any planes attacking you from above with HE rounds might be a concern. But other than that, this thing doesn't really rely on that. It's not built for its armor. It was never designed to be. And one other minor thing, Gaijin, can we please have one in the British tree? We use these things more than the Americans did. Just saying, but off topic that was. Let's go over the mobility. So the 7.4 ton tank is propelled by a 192 horsepower engine, propelling the 7.4 ton vehicle to a top speed of 35 miles per hour forwards. I can assure you, you will be hitting those speeds quite frequently, and this vehicle really does zip around the battlefield. Ironically, like a Locust, although this thing definitely is more of a go-kart than it is a Locust, but we'll gloss over that. The reverse speed is pretty handy as well, getting you out of most situations that you'll run into, and, well, the pivoting on the spot is also pretty good, so again, you'll get out of situations just fine with this tank. Coming up to the main armament, we do obviously have a 30 caliber machine gun, with it being an American tank. They tend to have coaxes, unlike the Japanese tanks, and it's okay. I mean, it's a 30 cal. It'll do the job. But of course, we're not here to discuss the 30 cal. We're here to discuss the 37mm M6. We've obviously talked about the 37mm quite a bit in this series so far, and it is one that is pretty solid. And obviously, we don't have a stabilizer on this one, but obviously other 37mm tanks that I will be talking about in the competition part will have a stabilizer. But otherwise, the turret traverse is pretty fine. The gun elevation and depression is perfectly acceptable, and its reload rate is also perfectly acceptable. Obviously, though, with it being a 3-man crew, if you take a hit, you're probably dead. So make sure to use this thing's mobility to get into a good position. Going over the shells briefly, because, well, again, we don't really need to talk too much about these. I'd heavily suggest bomb rushing the M51B1 shell. This is very important. Trust me, this shell makes a huge difference to the post pen. There is also this SAP HE round. I've tried this and I don't like it, so I would personally just ignore it. Normally, I'd be telling people to bring some form of high explosive, but the problem is that this shell is... It's like a HE, but it's so bad at its job, I wouldn't even suggest it. And with that penetration, you're making a Russian tank with shrapnel shells blush. Let's put it that way. Your main shell always will be this, but you'll be stuck with this starting off if you're spading the vehicle. But otherwise, this shell here pretty much can kill everything that it will come across, bar a couple of Russians. And I've even took this thing to top tier and killed a couple of Leopard 2s from the side with this thing. Trust me, it's fun, but, well, you need this shell to get the post pen, let's put it that way. Of course, the 30 cal is your standard 30 cal, so that's nothing really to talk about there. Overall, though, this thing relies mostly on its mobility and also its small size, because, again, this tank is shorter than me. And like I said, this is a vehicle that is definitely one that can be a little nuisance when you let it. But of course, now we can go take a look at how this thing drives, and hopefully you can get an idea of what I'm on about. I'll see you all very shortly. And welcome to the test drive. So as per usual, we're going to take a look at how this vehicle drives and everything. And well, straight away you can see the acceleration. This little fella just accelerates and accelerates. It's like a drag car off the line. Obviously not as dramatic, but you get my point. And already after a few seconds, we're at top speed. And there you go, the good old-fashioned Locust handbrake maneuver, as I call it. All you do is just turn at high speed, but I like to call it the handbrake maneuver. As you can tell, the mobility of this little guy is very good, but obviously sometimes it can get you into trouble, like so, but well, this thing's small size doesn't really bother it. As for the gun though, you'll notice obviously the stabilizer is obviously lacking, because as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't have one. But the post pen, as you can see, with this 37mm, is more than acceptable. And with it having a great rate of fire as well, you can quite comfortably deal with stuff like Panzer IVs at this tier very comfortably. And like I said, with the mobility even being good off-road, you can practically just drive this thing around at high speed, cause terror, and just have fun. And like I said, you don't need the HE round, because even if you did take some sap, it's only 60 grams of TNT, which is crap. But the simple fact of the matter is, this thing can just get around the map, shoot at stuff it needs to, and you can have fun doing it. I mean, what more can I say? This is one of the more fun talismans that I've ever had the pleasure of owning. And like I said before, I got this. It's the simple fact that it's such a fun vehicle to drive, and you can just have a lot of fun with it. And I mean, it's obviously not going to be the top dog in terms of talismans at this tier, but for the American tech tree, it's definitely one of the best. And like I said, the mobility is just such a strong point of this vehicle. The fact that you have this plus this gun is downright criminal at 2.0. So you can imagine how some people get away with putting bushes on this thing at top tier and going around trolling leopards and things like that. So, yeah, it is definitely one to consider. And as you can see, this little fella, it's even smaller than that truck. So that gives you an idea. Well, half track, but they're basically the same thing. And as you can see, the post pen in the shots that I'm demonstrating is pretty good. Obviously, you do need to aim it a little bit, but other than that, this little fella's quite fun. So, let's go back to the hangar, and let's discuss this vehicle's competition. I'll see you shortly. And welcome back to the hangar. As you can tell, there isn't really going to be much to talk about here, because once again, this is one of those vehicles that, as it would say on the front of some sort of weird-ass advertisement, there isn't really anything that competes with this thing. Like, I'll be brutally honest with that. Like, it's like the new Volvo ads I've been seeing. Like, they're like, oh, this is one of the best hybrids in the world. There's nothing that matches this. You know, it's one of those kind of things. So obviously the Locust does have, obviously, its fair share of flaws, and, well, every tank does, so that's not really a fair comparison, but if you want something that is pretty much this, but a bit bigger with a stabilizer, the only real answer to that is the M3A1, and, well, this is going to be the next tank in the series, and, well, you'll see just how dangerous this little fella is. It's almost as dangerous as a Locust, because, like I said, this thing can actually take a hit from some of the guns in the game because of that gun mantler. I've had multiple high kill runs in a Stuart just because of how dangerous it is, and the fact that its armor can sometimes take a hit, especially when it's hull down. And the simple fact of the matter is that the Locust is fairly matched with this thing. Obviously, the Locust does have the advantage of being smaller. It has obviously a better reverse rate. But the fact is, the Stuart has better survivability and can actually take a hit. And that can come up in some of the lower tier games that you'll likely play. Of course, coming over to the tank destroyers, we've obviously discussed the M3 in the previous episode, and of course the M8 in another previous episode. But other than that, there isn't really much to put together for this competition sort of thing. If you want a little bit of a lower BR, Stuart, you can have this one, which is 1.7 and is pretty much an M3A1 with a couple of minor changes that, fair enough, they do obviously make a difference to the vehicle, but this is definitely one that you can go, yeah, this is still pretty solid. But like I said, it's nothing that really holds the Locust back, and it's definitely in the top contenders for a low-tier talisman at this tier. And that brings me to the conclusion. If you're really looking forward for something fun in low tier and you want to slap a talisman on it, this thing's cheap, it's fun, and not only that, this thing's had that many memes made about it. Do I really need to go any further? And like I said, I've had a lot of fun taking this thing to higher tiers and just trolling with it. I even took in a 6-7 match and just sat on a Russian heavy's backside just shooting a transmission until he gave up, trying to kill me. And the only reason why he didn't want to focus on me is because I couldn't actually pen him. And, well, pen him anywhere else, really. And the simple fact of the matter is, you can get away with that sort of thing because people actually do respect the Locust, and sometimes people will actually keep you as a pet. So the simple fact that you can just drive around in this thing, people will actually respect you for it, but also you can have a bit of fun with the enemy team, that makes it a good catch in my eyes. But anyway, I'm going to leave you all to it for today. I hope you enjoyed seeing the M22 Locust covered in this series. Of course, the next vehicle in the series will be a plane, but of course, the next vehicle for the tanks will be the tank we've literally just talked about, the M3A1, which has had a slight nerf, as we'll point out in this episode, or then the next episode of this, but it's still pretty strong either way. Anyway, I'm going to leave you all to it for today. I really hope you enjoyed seeing the M22 Locust in action today, and I will see you all on the next one.